Yeah, and I guess I guess it makes sense that if you grow up around something, or especially if you see your parents doing it or something like that, that you would take to that. I feel like it being in the family, I'm like, that just means younger. I would look up at it and be like, hell no, I'm not doing that. So.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Cup of Tea Critiques podcast, where we dive deep into cinema and industry topics so you can decide for yourself if they're your cup of tea. Ready for a deep look with a deep brew? This week's topic, I can't believe what I just saw! Stunt work in the industry. I'm your host, Brandon Chasen, and I'm here with my brother Chris, my mother Reva, and my father Terry.
So today we're going to talk about stunt work, and what I find fascinating about this particular aspect of filmmaking is it is actually people who are willing to sacrifice, their bodies to get a shot. One stunt performer, Jack Gill, who worked on movies like The Dukes of Hazzard, Blues Brothers, Alcatraz, and Daredevil, he said, quote, "I have broken my back twice, my neck once, 23 broken bones, cut a finger off, and punctured some lungs." Yuck.
Yeah.
Melissa Stubbs, who worked on Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Inception, Deadpool, The Dark Knight Rises, interestingly said, "If you haven't broken something, you weren't trying hard enough." So what that suggests to me is that they go into this field fully expecting to get hurt. Mm-hmm. And in some cases get hurt seriously. And as far as they're concerned, they go to the hospital, get fixed up, heal, and they're right back at it. That's the nature of the business. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious about what drives people to do this kind of work and how they get into it. Why don't we start with talking about any movies you can think of that had the most fascinating stunts you've ever seen?
Yeah, well, two of them come to mind to me, or series of movies, Fast and Furious stunts that they put together, and the Mission Impossible ones. And as an aside, the fact that Tom Cruise does a lot, or did a lot of the stunts for a lot of his movies as an A-list actor. And then one other person that I didn't realize did some stunts was Charlize Theron did some stunts in some of her movies that I found quite interesting. That as an A-list actor, that they actually allowed her to do that, as well as Tom Cruise for that matter. From my understanding is he did some pretty hairy stuff in Mission Impossible series.
Mm-hmm. Generally speaking, I mean, there's a lot of, I think, great stunts that I can think of. All the ones that have to do with being high up somewhere. Somebody essentially scaling down a building are the ones that stick out to me. One in particular was, I believe the movie was Cradle of the Grave. There is a scene where I think Jet Li is on the side of a building. He's hanging from kind of the cross beams, on the side of the building, and he's one floor at a time, letting go, falling to the next one, and grabbing the next beam, and then letting go, falling to the next one, and it made my palms sweat to watch it. It was very it was very intense, I thought. That is the first one that comes to my mind when we talk about stunts. It's not necessarily that it's the greatest, the greatest stunt or the most memorable stunt in a movie, but it's the first one that definitely comes to my mind anyway. Because I think I was about 13 or 14 when that movie came out, and I remember watching it, and yeah, it was nerve-wracking just to watch, even knowing that it's staged.
ones from Mission Impossible. I've always known Tom Cruise does his own stunts, and there are times watching those movies where I'm like, there's no way he actually did this. And then you find out, no, he really did launch himself out of a plane, ride a motorcycle off the side of a cliff, like these kinds of things. I'm sitting here, this is Tom freaking Cruise. And so I was also aware that insurance was involved, but when I would think about those things, and when I read all this stuff, I'm like, how expensive must this have been for them to insure Tom freaking Cruise? Because of the number of hits and blockbusters he's made specific to the Mission Impossible series. But in addition to that, like you, Dad, I'm good with the Fast and Furious action sequences and all of those stunts. And just to put myself on blast, yes, I know that at this point they have gotten absolutely ridiculous and unrealistic. But unlike the Jason Statham movies that I watched in his early ons, Jason Statham movies started with ridiculous, non-believable action. At least with the Fast and Furious series, they grew into it, and they've even acknowledged that, like, certain ridiculous things, like, we've been to space. Like, they know that didn't happen, that kind of stuff. So I've been able to accept those and enjoy those much, much more than I can the Statham movies. Sorry, Jason Statham, but you still owe me some money for those. Those are the primary ones that I've enjoyed. And then I think about DMX in any of the movies, like Chris just brought up Cradle to the Grave. He also did Exit Wounds. And I know he didn't do those movies, like he didn't do all of the stunts in those, but because of the character and the energy that he normally provides, I found it interesting how his normal on-screen presence played a role in my enjoyment of the sequences that were done by his stunt doubles. But yeah, Fast and Furious movies, Marvel movies, of course, and check out all of those.
Well, for me, any movies that involve aerial stunts really get me. They really just make my heart drop to my stomach. One of the first ones I saw, I can remember being back in college, and it's the first time I'd seen a film like this, where at the beginning of the film they show a woman dropping off the side of a mountain. She was a mountain climber, and she suddenly drops off the side of a mountain. And it felt so real to me, and I believe it instilled a fear. Not that I would ever mountain climb but it instilled a fear of heights in me.
Yes.
Anything involving aerial scenes, that is what's pretty scary to me. What I found fascinating in some of the links that I sent you guys, what I find fascinating in reading about stunt work is that there are stunt specialties. I have always seen stunt work as just this one big ball of thing, and if you did one thing, you did another. But it turns out there are specialties. There's driving, there's fighting, there's shooting, and so I was wondering, of those different specialties, do you guys have a particular one that you prefer in your films? Because I think we can admit that most of the films with stunts are likely action films, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, action or
and some slapstick comedy, which was one thing I was actually going to highlight. So it's, an interesting thing is like when I think stunts, my brain immediately goes to action, but a lot of especially the original stunts you would see in movies were actually comedies, and some before there was actually sound basically. So, I think it's. But I'm with you on action being the main, genre that you see it in.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point, Chris, because they talk a lot about Buster Keaton's films that were made back in like the 1920s. He was an actor who did his own stunts in the 1920s silent films. And I think his most famous one was called, Three Ages, which was done in 1923. It's a failed building leap. So it's a 30-second scene where he misses this leap and ultimately winds up on a fire engine. It's like among the top 20 stunt scenes. So, but nonetheless, you're right. They were doing stunt work back in the silent era, and those were not action films that he did. So that's a fair point, Chris. Today, we tend to associate stunt work with action movies.
Yeah, action as a generally speaking thing, and it depends on the type of movie. Fight scenes, so whether spy movies fall into action, I guess they do. But, spies usually have a certain set of skills. Martial arts movies, that kind of thing. And then, to your point, the overarching one is driving. There's always some driving scene, usually in some action movie. There's a driving sequence where some of them get really ridiculous and then they go ad nauseum and you go, okay, enough already. Sometimes I do get tired of the whole driving thing because I think it's just overused in action movies. And then occasionally some of the fight scenes, I know they're trying to, as we were talking about earlier today, portray how good the two adversaries are. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they go overboard with that. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, yes, they're good. And it's a 15-minute fight scene. You go, ugh, I'm tired of this. Be over with. Thank you. Somebody win, please. Or nobody win, everybody just passes out. But yeah, I think if I had to pick one, I think it's the action ones that we've talked about, like the Mission Impossible ones where they do some sort of incredible stunt that you go, oh no, they did not do that. Mm-hmm. Those are the ones that stick out for me.
What kind of scene?
I think it was kind of like what Brandon brought up earlier about the thing where he's, jumping out of a plane and landing somewhere.
Okay, so you like those kinds of stunts.
Yeah, where, to your point, where it's sort of some of it is a free fall kind of a thing and then something happens to snap that. Mm-hmm. I think those are the ones that kind of get you like, whoa.
Yeah. I will say, so there's two things I want to comment on here. Back to finish what Dad's talking about, I think part of why I really enjoy the stunts in Mission Impossible, I shouldn't say part of, the reason for me that I enjoy those stunts so much is knowing that Tom Cruise does all of those, and it makes the character that much more believable to me. Not just that, like, he's willing to do those things, which obviously Tom Cruise is, but the realism of, like, something catastrophic really could happen here. Like, take this out of the movie context. Some harm could really come to Tom Cruise. Now, don't think I want to put him in a bubble. Like, I don't want to say it like that. Like, I appreciate his movies and everything, but the real life, the reality that something could happen to this real life person is actually occurring in this scene. Mm-hmm. Let alone that it's Ethan Hunt in the moment, but it's Tom Cruise for life. Like that. That's why I enjoy those kinds of sequences specifically to that movie. However, unlike Dad, my favorite action sequences are the hand-to-hand combat ones. But I want to be a little more specific. Like, I enjoy, for example, like everybody that's seen any of the Bourne movies, and they've had those hand-to-hand combat scenes. Those have been great. I love it for, the fact that it's the mano a mano, who's going to best the other in this moment here. They tend to involve a lot of the props and items that are around in the scene that are in that moment and stuff. And so that's why I really enjoy those. But the best ones to me are like Atomic Blonde. And when I saw the clip, Mom, when you shared it was the top 20 stunt sequences, and these were given by people in the industry. So this wasn't from a list of fans. These were done by Atomic Blonde was on that list. And what I appreciate about that scene is why I love the Daredevil series. They have a very long action sequence that looks like the actual fatigue of the characters plays a role in it. You can tell Charlize Theron is tired as she is continuing the scene, but they purposefully film it in that like one take to give it the realism. And so those are the types of sequences that are my absolute favorite. When you have hand-to-hand combat, when you have all of the items going on, but the characters truly are getting tired as it goes along, it feels more realistic than some other movies, like, say, as much as I enjoyed The Matrix, and I know they're computer generated and stuff, but they all just seem like they have unending energy. It's boring. That is boring in comparison to when I can see, Daredevil, for example, start off the scene with 100% energy, and by the time he gets to the last 4 or 5 foes, he's probably more like 16 and hoping that they beat each other up more than they've been trying to attack him.
Выйди на рацию, она здесь! Я пытаюсь! Быстрее, быстрее! Она тут! 3-й этаж! Давай, давай!
So those are my favorite, but I know that, I don't know, Dad, does that feel any different for you if you see a sequence like that compared to the other long-winded hand-to-hand scenes you were talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said in terms of you've seen the progression of the characters in terms of their fatigue factor. We just started watching a new series yesterday, and there was a similar scene in there that was like that. You could tell that they were both good, and I thought that the amount of time they spent on that fight sequence was perfect. Interestingly enough, I do think the Bourne ones were overboard. I think they went like, God, stop, please. I mean, they highlighted the fact that both were good and not giving up, and it was a very, intense battle. But I thought they droned on too long for me.
I mean, really, just as we were saying, aerial stunts. I think anything having to do with scaling the side of a building, like those are the ones that we mentioned the Tom Cruise, Burj Khalifa, scaling the side of the Burj Khalifa. I've mentioned the Jet Li one earlier. I think I like those in part because you get the combination of the stunt they're doing and the aerial photography of it. So I just enjoy kind of just the wide shot where you just see how high up they are, and I enjoy the suspense of that. I do like different fight choreography though, especially when it's in a confined space basically, and it's kind of a one person takes on all kind of a thing. One particular one that comes to mind is the movie Old Boy. It came out in 2003. It was directed by Park Chan-wook, and there's a very famous hallway fight scene in that movie. That it's like an extended scene where he's just taking on the main character's just taking on a bunch of people. So somebody trying to fight when they're outnumbered in a confined space, I find interesting. And I think what I love about fight scenes too is especially it can give you exposure to different movie stars from different cultures that they're not famous over here necessarily, but they are famous in their country, or they've been even when they've been in Hollywood movies, it's been years and maybe a generation kind of missed out on them. And so I do love that, like the fight sequences with actors from several different South Asian countries who are probably much bigger stars in their home countries than they are here. And so I think that kind of appeals to me about a lot of those, about a lot of fighting stunts. Like, Michelle Yeoh, obviously, when she did Everything Everywhere All at Once, she got kind of reintroduced to a lot of movie fans who may have not seen her in the Bond movie, or may have not seen Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And she's been working this whole time, but then she gets this big hit movie, and it allows people to be reintroduced to her background. That's the appeal of the fight sequences to me, is that it just the characters and the actors that it reintroduces us to.
In terms of what Chris was saying about being exposed to actors that may be famous in their native countries and not as exposed here, I was surprised to find out, and I didn't know this, or maybe I heard it before and just forgot about it, that Jackie Chan started out as a stunt person and became, a major actor. And Jason Statham, Brandon's favorite actor, was a stunt person who became, I guess you could debate whether or not he's become a major actor. But the one that always stuck out to me was, and this is from way back, was Lee Majors, who became the $6 Million Man. And, that I guess that was really his major claim to fame.
Yeah, and Arnold Schwarzenegger does a lot of his own stunts as well. Yeah.
There's an actress.
They're different. They're different. Yeah. Sorry, I was real quick. I'll just interject on what Mom said about Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's interesting because the two of you are bringing up two very different styles of doing their own stunts. Jackie Chan's stunts are athletic. They're very physical in nature. Like, he's got to be flexible. He's got to be fast. He's got to be limber, all that kind of stuff. I feel like Arnold Schwarzenegger is in a lot of action sequences where things blow up or shot. I don't feel like his stunts are the same. They're two different worlds of stunts, if you ask me, in comparison, when you compare those two actors. So I mention that to say I don't view Arnold Schwarzenegger's stunts in the same light. I don't see his action sequences in the same light as when I talk about like a Tom Cruise, or with Dad bringing up Jackie Chan. I feel like can we not view them as maybe tiers?
What I find interesting is the tone of stunts, of some of the stunts that people like, the genre bending of it, I guess. The three people we mentioned, Arnold Schwarzenegger mainly does pretty, he's serious in these action roles, and okay. Jason Statham is pretty serious in these is very serious, actually. In fact, I think one of the kind of things about his movies is that he's this overly serious character, and people around him are like kind of confused by him, like he's intense and aloof and stuff like that. And Jackie Chan, to me, is the other end of the spectrum, almost, because he's often comedic in some of his roles, and so I feel like his stunts kind of take on that personality in a sense. Like, when I think about some of the things he did, obviously Rush Hour is a comedy, an action comedy, but the tone of his stunts is like, for instance, him trying to fight people and protect all these pieces of pottery, towards the end, and then like he's trying to not only fight but like be gentle with these very delicate, priceless pieces of architecture, and so just scenes like that, I think and certainly it's not in, if you start going to some of his older movies, they might be a little more just straight up action, but I feel like there's this comedic tone even to a lot of his, the way he uses his environment to fight people, or the way he picks up random objects, or the way he, the different things like that. And so, I think that's an interesting element to the discussion about stunt work as well. Is this really serious? Is it really big, booming and very serious, or is it a little more cheeky and comedic?
Yeah, Arnold's stuff tends to be kind of the dry humor. I'm trying to remember the name of the movie, the one with Jamie Lee Curtis.
True Lies.
True Lies, yep.
Yeah, that one was one that they tried to border more on comedy. because, you ever kill people? Yeah, but they were all bad. And, he makes comments in some of his action movies that are specifically for humor. But to your point, Chris, they're I guess more dry humor than anything else.
Does the tone of the stunt performance change the risk of the performance at all? Because my thinking is it doesn't. If you think only about, Jackie Chan, and typically his stunts are done in a comedic tone, then you can say chances are he's not jumping out of airplanes, for example. He's not jumping off the side of mountains. He's not doing things that, as far as the viewer is concerned, that are going to kill him. But movies of a darker tone, but because it's comedic, that's not how you're viewing it.
Right.
Okay? Because it's comedic, it's not how you're viewing it. And so I guess my question is, he's mainly fighting, right? Arnold Schwarzenegger and those guys, they are doing something very different. Scaling buildings, jumping off buildings, even in the case of, they talked, for example, about Ben-Hur being one of, having the chariot race in Ben-Hur being one of the best stunt performances they've ever seen, as rated by stunt people. And you have people, and I understand why. I never thought about, horse performance as a specialty of stunt work, but it is. And you have people, you watch that scene, you have people falling off the chariots, getting run over by chariots, fighting between one another while they're on the chariots. They're having to maintain their balance. And it feels risky. And to Chris's point, the tone of that matches the tone of the Arnold Schwarzenegger, Tom Cruise type stunts. Whereas the Jackie Chan stuff doesn't. But can you get killed doing that stuff? Like
some of those, yeah.
I think part of it. I think part of the way that they pull off comedy is that the fights are mismatched. None of these fighters really stand a chance against Jackie Chan.
Okay.
Right. I think that's.
Right.
I think that, and I think that makes it funny because he could take everybody there, even, and so I think it's easier to make it. I think the balance of power almost is such that it's easier to make humor out of it, whereas Arnold can get shot like anybody he's shooting, right? Like it's not he doesn't necessarily. Yeah, in the fight he's probably got the upper hand, but like there's a lot of gut, and I don't think I'm trying to think if Jackie Chan uses guns in any of his movies. I don't think he does.
I don't think so.
Yeah. So I think maybe that's what helps aid the comedy of stunts, is when the fighter that we're quote unquote rooting for is so much better than everybody that he's taking on.
Yeah, I think that's some of it. As we keep going on with this conversation, especially when we talk about Jackie Chan, first off, Mom, it depends on the type of movie, too, that he's in. And what I mean by that is, to Chris's point, there's a lot of comedy that's involved. But if you remember, one of the first movies for me with Jackie Chan was Rumble in the Bronx. And there are a lot of action sequences there, like him running across the street and trying to beat a vehicle that's trying to run him down, for example. Well, I think about him doing his own stunts, and he's really trying to outrun that car before it hits him. So I think about, you talk about dangerous levels, or like if something can kill him in terms of the action sequences. Yes, that can happen. In fact, he broke his foot during the filming of that movie, and what they had to do was basically give him a rubber shoe to fit over his cast, and then he continued doing the action sequences. So he was still doing all of his own stunt work. So, but to that end, as we were talking, something that came to mind is, I realize, and I'm probably speaking only for myself, and it's probably going to sound a little foolish, when I'm watching the film, I don't always think about them as stunts. And as it is, we keep saying action sequences. We know that action sequences are stunts, but I don't think about them as stunts.
Yeah,
which is why, depending on the type of film, that's when I really start respecting what is stunt work. Some of that has to do with the danger level. like when they go exceptionally far with the Fast and Furious movies and they do something ridiculous. But more of it is the type of film that I want to take in. So when I watch Marvel, I don't think they're doing stunts. I think it's action fighting.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah. To be fair, if we as viewers are looking at it as stunt work, then apparently it's not coming across as authentic, right? I don't think it feels authentic to us. But I guess I'm still stuck on the tonal differences in the action sequences or stunt performances, however you want to refer to this. I agree with you, Brandon. I like the action sequences term. Because insurance is concerned about risk, and I think this is a good time to talk about this. Insurance is concerned about risk, and they don't give a damn about the genre of the movie, right?
No.
You can imagine insurance companies don't care about the genre of the movie. Jackie Chan is a big star worth, whatever value he is to the film, and he is doing his own stunt work, and if he gets hurt, the film is going to lose shooting days, or we're going to have to pay.
Yeah.
So that's a risk for us. So they are concerned with the specific stunt itself. Same with Arnold Schwarzenegger, same with Tom Cruise. Right? I mean, so as a result, what the insurance companies, have a great deal of influence over what can and cannot be done in some of these films when it comes to stunt work.
Yeah.
One of the articles, for example, talked about, I can't remember which film it was on, but Tom Cruise, as we know, does an awful lot of his stunts.
Mm-hmm.
And an insurance company said, this one, no. They just said absolutely no to this one and to this in particular.
Mm-hmm.
And he refused to take no for an E. He said, screw that. Tom Cruise pushes the envelope. There's no telling Tom Cruise no to this.
Well,
and insurance companies, in addition to that, will force filmmakers to modify the shots to minimize risk to the performer.
Mm-hmm.
Or to tell them, no, for this you need to use a stunt person who is not worth, $1 billion. Okay? If he gets injured, fine, we'll pay his bills and give him a little money and insert the next stunt performer to do it. So they have a great deal of influence over these films. And that is something I was taken aback by, that insurance companies actually play a role in the making of these films that involve a lot of stunts.
Yeah, I agree with that, Mom. I think, though, for me, learning this about, I think it was one of the more recent Mission Impossible films, it gave me a greater appreciation for Tom Cruise. It gave me a greater appreciation for stunt people. Reading about this and understanding the insurance implications with it. Number one, because it highlights just how much skill it takes to effectively pull these stunts off, and it reminds us of the real dangers that these actors are putting themselves through when they, jump out of a plane, they fly through a window, the realistic idea that they may actually get assaulted during the fight scenes, even though they're not supposed to be making connections. They are actually sometimes punching each other, that kind of stuff. But the other thing, too, is the reason that they're able to pull some of these movies off, like that Tom Cruise was able to force the issue, had a lot to do to his dedication to becoming a better stunt person as an actor. Getting the different licenses, he's a licensed pilot. There was another license, I think, that he got or whatever, that and that makes it easier for these insurance companies to say yes to him because he's at least shown the dedication and he's certified to do some of these things that they're actually asking of him as an actor, of the character. So I'm saying all that to say that you're right. I initially didn't like the idea that the insurance companies could influence, how a film was going to go, but I understand it. I don't like it, but I understand it a little bit better.
You train and drill every little aspect over and over and over and over again.
They were doing 30 jumps a day.
Getting to a point where he was just a machine. Over 500 skydives.
That's what we do. Over 13,000 motocross jumps.
Oh, it's going to be fun.
Oh, it's great.
We replicated this ramp.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess it brings me back to the kind of push and pull of the creativity side of things and the business side of things, and how they, sometimes, what you want has to be pulled back by reality and practicality. So, it's an interesting, thing that you brought up. That insurance companies is another entity, beyond just the studio saying, yeah, we don't have the money for that, or we're not doing this location, or we're not getting this prop. Now you also have insurance saying we're not doing this stunt because we don't want the actor to get killed. So
yeah.
So it's interesting, another piece of that, I guess.
No, I was just going to say there are a few things that I want to cover that you kind of started out with earlier. One was the why do they do this thing, and I thought it was interesting in one of the articles that we read and prep for this. The guy pretty much said it's an interesting thing because in other, for lack of a better term, industries or whatever you want to call it, family. My grandfather did it. My grandmother did it. My uncle did it. My father does it. My sister does it. So one of them was it's a kind of all in the family thing. Yeah. And then the other is, I believe, to your point, the question is why do they do it? I think a lot of them are adrenaline junkies. I think they're like, they get off on the thrill of doing it. Yeah. And I guess, you can also call it some bit of professional pride in being able to actually pull it off. I guess there's some satisfaction in terms of doing that too. That they see it as challenging. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I guess it makes sense that if you grow up around something, or especially if you see your parents doing it or something like that, that you would take to that. I feel like it being in the family, I'm like, that just means younger, I would look up at it and be like, hell no, I'm not doing that. So it's like, I got an up close and personal seat to see what I will not be doing. So,
it's all of that. I think I found very interesting on several fronts. To Chris's point, when you're up close and personal to it, it doesn't surprise me that you would gravitate towards it. As a kid that grew up wanting to be a professional athlete, I found parallels between my watching my stars on the diamond or on the football field, and how these people talk about seeing the other stunt people doing their work, and how that helped inspire them to go do the same thing. Another thing, though, that I found interesting, and this is going to go back to something that Mom kind of brought up in the intro. There's just so many connections to help you get inside the door to doing these types of things. One of the people in the articles you gave us, Mom, talked about getting his start at like 7 or 8 years old because his dad was in the business. He got him on a production, and that allowed him to get, certified with SAG. I have a friend of a friend that was a stunt person for a few years. He grew up here in Illinois, went out after graduating high school, and started trying to make a career for himself as a stunt person. And he did talk about how much harder it was for him to get in, having not grown up in the industry. And so that made it harder to get work. The other aspect that we brought up is adrenaline too. And there's an actor in the article that talked about one of the car scenes where internally he knew he needs to hit the brake, and like that was trying to overpower him, but he had to keep his foot on the accelerator and accept the crash because that's what the scene was asking for. Well, this same friend that I was talking about realized as he was doing all the work out there, he would go back and forth between Hollywood and Illinois. Well, he was in a relationship, and he started realizing that he didn't want to put his life on the line anymore for these scenes because he was ready to grow a life with this woman. And so that's why he ended up leaving the industry. So while he still was a self-proclaimed adrenaline junkie, it changed once he realized family was more important to him, or starting a family was more important to him. And that's what ultimately led to him moving back here permanently and building a different life. Because I think that we're right. I think adrenaline is a big part of it. I think that connections will always, no matter what industry we're talking about, connections will always help. But ultimately, the individual will decide when is enough, what is enough.
What I find interesting is that there's very little formal training in stunt work. So they learned it all from their family members. They work on things like falls, they do trapeze work, trampoline work, sword fighting, things like that. And that is how they learn to do what they do. There are a few stunt schools that train in specific areas like driving, fighting, and running. But overwhelmingly, there are very few schools that train in stunt work, which speaks to why this is such a specialized and closed area. So I imagine that people in the industry, I should say filmmakers, likely work with the same stunt teams or stunt families almost throughout their career. As a matter of fact, some of the things I read, directors talked about the fact that I always work with such and such. So there's really a tight-knit group, which makes it difficult for new people to penetrate that.
One other thing is the advent of CGI versus people in doing stunts, and articles that you provided for us said, I don't know if it was the director of Eraser said that probably if they had done the movie in a more, modern time, they would have probably pushed them in the direction of using CGI for a lot of the work that they did rather than using stunt people. And I was just asking, what are you guys' thoughts on that? I think my personal thought is CGI used judiciously in movies is kind of, okay. Depends on how much it gets used. And I understand the cost factor where, obviously, as you brought up, insurance plays a factor in it. If you use CGI, you can obviously cut your insurance costs by a lot, I would imagine. But I think what you said earlier, though, hits home in how much of what you use lends to the authenticity of the movie. And I think that's what a director is probably going to fall on most.
I hope they do.
Yeah.
My general feeling on the topic, Dad, is I hate anything that takes jobs away.
Yeah.
I hate anything that takes jobs away. And if they're going to do this, then there are going to be fewer stunt people. There's going to be much less stunt work. And I'm just not going to be a fan of that. Now, I understand that CGI can allow for different action sequences that maybe you can't, or you were maybe even unwilling to think of because you didn't want to risk human life, and I respect that, but I still want people to maintain their jobs. So I really hope they can keep the CGI down to a minimum. That being said, one thing that I'll ask as well related to the CGI is if they increase the amount of CGI they're putting into these films, therefore decreasing the premiums with the insurance, is it just taking the money from one industry and putting it towards another? Because I'm curious how much more it costs to do these CGI sequences. And if it ends up that it's $2 million now on insurance premiums, okay, cool, you get that down to $800,000. Well, is the extra 1.2 being put into the CGI, and therefore are you really saving any money?
Yeah, but you are bringing the risk down, so that is one side of that argument.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the notion that, it's unfortunate if CGI is used as a way around hiring people, but it also makes me wonder, though, if in certain cases it's less that CGI is taking a job away as much as this wasn't going to happen unless we use CGI. So it just would have been absent that, in which case it's not really taking a job away. It's just creating a scene that we wouldn't have otherwise been able to shoot. I think, and the only way I really think to battle against that is tax incentives that rival whatever the insurance cost would be. If there's, and I don't know whether there is or not, but just if there's stunt work specific tax credit, that a production can cash in on or use to lower the expense of their film, that's strong enough to encourage different productions to indeed go ahead and do the actual stunt. That's the only thing I could think that would help neutralize that, other than good intentions from the studio themselves.
Well, Chris, you brought up an interesting piece that, if the insurance companies already can influence what can and cannot be done on set, then with the increased use in CGI, or at least the increased availability of CGI, I feel like the insurance companies will say, no, we won't do it. Like, there will be no insurance companies allowing Tom Cruise to continue doing what he's doing because they know that it could be covered by CGI. I'm throwing this out there as explaining my argument. And if they are saying that, then that would in turn mean there would be fewer stunt jobs, stunt scenes that will be done. And I feel like that's where we're going to talk about eliminating the work. That's what I'm afraid.
I think that would cost that insurance company money if they went that. If they chose to take a hard line stance and say no to more stuff, I think they wouldn't cash in as much. Maybe I'm just saying, I'm explaining my fear with what you said. Like this. Yeah, no, but I hear that concern. I just don't think insurance companies would go about that because I just think they would make less money out of the deal if that were the case. If they just shot down more stuff, if they increase this is too risky to insure, then that's just less that they would get out of it. So I think it's always going to be based on whatever the actual
balance.
risk.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, they can't. I agree. Insurance companies won't make any money if they try to exert too much influence over the production. They're not going to make any money, and they'll just go on, and the studio will just go on to a different insurance company, and I don't think they want that. So I don't think it'll ever reach that. I also think they've tried that already, and Tom Cruise said,
"You're fired." Yeah.
That's essentially what he did, and here it is decades later, and he's still doing his own stunts. So I don't think it's an antagonistic relationship between the insurance companies and the studios. I don't think it's an antagonistic relationship.
I think they're trying to mitigate risk. I understand.
Yeah. I agree with that, but
neither one wants anyone hurt.
No, they don't. But I don't think it's going to be a hard line, like just a switch of a flip of the switch. I think it happens like all things happen. It'll be incremental. Let's say they will only. I don't know how the business works, so I'm just throwing it out here to make it make sense. Yeah. Let's say the production company says we need you to insure 40 stunts. Okay. And then they go, okay, these are the list of 40 stunts that you can do. And then progressively they're like, no, we're only going to insure 30 stunts. No, now it's going to only be 20 stunts. It'll just be an incremental imposition onto the company before they go, okay, no, never mind. Like, I'm not saying that they will eliminate all stunts. I'm saying though that I can easily see them going, there's a list that no longer will be acceptable. And the industry itself may go, now that there's CGI, these are stunts we no longer have to insure. So that's how I'm saying it will eventually work out.
Yeah, I could see where directors would get pushed for CGI just in terms of cost, like the guy was saying with Eraser. They're going to make some balancing decisions. Okay, we're going to cut out, 5 of these scenes as stunt work and make them CGI. I
can see him doing that. Anything to try to, reduce the premium.
And the cost, the overall cost.
Yeah. But what Chuck Russell, who's the director of Eraser, was concerned with was authenticity. That's what he wants to deliver. That's the kind of experience he wants to deliver. And if there's anything that could jeopardize that, then that is what he had a problem with, and that's his concern with today's. And I'll say one other thing too about the risk of insurance companies' influence on these productions, the risk to potential hiring of stunt performers. That pool is tiny as it is. We just talked about that. The fact that pool is so tiny, and I think they should open it up a bit. That is my personal feeling about that. I think the fact that it's confined to families, essentially families who have been in the business, and then they bring up their own kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, and so forth into it, and it makes it difficult for anybody to penetrate that and participate in that is problematic. So, if you want some sensitivity to, your position, then I think you should have some sensitivity to others who want to do that kind of work as well.
Yeah.
But anyway, I find this whole thing, thank you guys for your input. I find this whole thing incredibly fascinating. I don't know any stunt people. I mean, we see their names scroll up. We see their names scroll in the credits, but I don't know their faces. I really don't know their names. Yet they put their lives on the line to help deliver an experience that typically we enjoy very much. These films.
Jennifer Garner did her own stunts in Alias. She did have a stunt person, but she did her own stunts.
They did fight scenes, a lot of fight scenes. That was another spy thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but she did that.
That's not real fighting. That's not. Anyway, go ahead.
Way to minimize it, Mom. Way to minimize it.
Yeah.
And another thing, and just for our own shits and giggles, for whatever reason, this took me down the rabbit hole, and I started wondering if all the actors on Snakes on a Plane could be considered stunt actors, because I'm curious if any live snakes were on that plane. So I looked that up, and I'm still like, yeah, anybody involved in that production had to be on there. But I do love this. Samuel Jackson's contract did not interact directly with any live snakes for that filming due to a strict contract clause requiring live snakes to stay at least 25 feet away from him. Sam's my guy. If y'all ever see me in a movie and there's a snake or whatever, you know the person that did my contract was Sam's guy, because that's exactly my situation.
25 feet is still too close.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I was thinking that might still be too close.
Yeah. It's 8 meters technically was, I guess, in the contract. Not even like 8T.
Yeah.
8T meters, right?
Really?
Could I?
Chris, if you like seeing Jet Li action and everything, you should watch The One. Not only was it actually I thought it was actually a good movie, but he did a hell of a lot of good stunts in that one.
Yeah.
That's I think the second best movie. I can't remember the first one. I gotta look it up. Because oddly enough, it was the one he did with Jason Statham. I think was his best. War, bro. That's the one I was trying to think of.
Oh, okay.
War, I think, is his best film, and The One was the second best, at least in terms of my enjoyment of it. And it's really weird to me that Jason Statham is in War and it's good. So. That bothered me for a long time. Thanks so much for listening to the Cup of Tea Critiques podcast. Be sure to follow this show so you don't miss the next episode. You can stay in the loop on all things COTC by subscribing on our website at cupofteacritiques.com. Find us on TikTok and Letterboxd as well. For Reba, Terry, and Chris, I'm Brandon. We'll see you next time for another Deep Look with a Deep Brew.